And Ukraine has denied any involvement in the alleged drone strike on the Kremlin. A senior presidential official says such actions have achieved nothing for Kiev, that's the capital of Ukraine. On the battlefield, the Kremlin, which is the official residence of Russian President Vladimir Putin, was hit by a drone attack. Now, Moscow has accused Ukraine of trying to kill Putin. Ukrainians are now worried about reprisal attacks. Let's get some reaction now. And we are going to talk to Gustavo de Carvalho. He's a senior researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Gustavo, thank you very much for your time. I want to kick off the conversation with comments from Mr. Dmitry Medvedev. You'll remember him as the former Russian president who is now the deputy head of Russia's Security Council. And he had these words to say after that drone attack on the Kremlin. And that is, I quote, "This leaves us with no option but to physically eliminate Zelensky and his clique." Do you think this could become a reality?
Certainly what we're starting to see and a lot of disinformation and difficult to assess in terms of the extent of the drone attacks 2 nights ago. But certainly what we're seeing is that the two countries preparing themselves for what many of us are anticipating to be a spring counteroffensive from Ukraine that should be starting soon. So certainly events like the drone attacks and particularly the statement from Medvedev does provide us a degree of concern in terms of how strong the spring attacks will be and how the defense and the response from the Russian side will be in the coming weeks and months.
Zelensky himself, President Zelensky, responding to this, and he said, "We don't attack Putin or Moscow, we fight on our territory." Who should we believe here? Because it does seem that there is a fair amount of propaganda as well.
I think the issue of believing at this stage, there is very limited public information, at least, that would allow us to really confirm in terms of what really happened. What does signify to us is the fact that there is definitely the two sides are preparing themselves for stronger offensives in the coming weeks. And in that sense, we should always take with a grain of salt the statements from both sides that state, especially as we know that in this war, as important as what is happening in the terrain is also the battle for narratives and controlling the information that it's out there.
Gustavo, of course, this war, yes, it is happening in Russia and Ukraine, but you will know that there has been talk of President Putin accepting an invitation to come to the BRICS summit, which will be held in South Africa in August. With this happening now, would it make President Putin reticent about even traveling anywhere from here on?
I think there is certainly a concern that has happened for some time in terms of Putin's ability to travel. We've seen in the last couple of years, Putin has not really traveled much except to China. And certainly coming to South Africa provides not only a legal battle for us within the country, but also in terms of the ability of provision of security. He has officially accepted the invitation to come to South Africa, but it's certainly in the coming months from the South African side, there is the legal debate in terms of whether we will or not be arresting him. But also from the Russian side, I think there is the element of the security of their own president. But I think it's also an important question for us to ask in terms of if Putin is coming to South Africa, the so-called friendship that we have with Russia should also be questioned in terms of putting South Africa in a very difficult spot in terms of where we are and what we should be doing based on our own national laws.
Yeah, and if we were to just put those legal issues aside about whether or not Putin does decide to come to South Africa, yes, that will be a legal headache. We've been trying to get answers from our leaders for the longest time, and I'm not sure that we've got a straight answer just yet. But how deep or how big a security headache would it be if Putin would force his way and come to South Africa with this elevation of the war now?
It certainly would be a really complicated affair in terms of managing the running of the summit. I think it's particularly threatening, not only in terms of the security situation that would create, but particularly in terms of distracting many of the official objectives of the summit itself. So in that sense, I think it's important for the South African government to look into the legal requirements for that and really to uphold the laws that we have ratified in case he would come, but particularly in terms of ensuring there is a political discussion with Moscow, ensuring that we are not cut in the weakest part of that bargain, which is very high risk right now, and we're seeing that South Africa can be one of the biggest losers when it comes to all of this debacle about the ICC and Putin's arrest.
I want to conclude the conversation with that theme of this being a headache for South Africa. For some time now, there has been this suggestion that the South African government is in talks with their Russian counterparts about convincing President Putin to attend this summit via a virtual link. And in fact, I put this question to the minister, our Minister of International Relations, and she said that she's not aware of any envoy that is or has been talking to President Putin or his government about him attending the summit virtually, which basically means that the invitation still stands. And so I guess the question is, do you think that that now might become a reality, that discussions, if indeed discussions are going on behind the scenes, those discussions are probably going to become much more credible for him to attend virtually?
Certainly. I think to a large extent we will still see the South African government battling for the next couple of months, not only in terms of identifying what will be done during the summits, and particularly if President Putin comes, but especially in terms of the implications that would have domestically in terms of his own participation. And what is clear to me is that with the different information, with the different positions that we've seen from the South African government, that this is far from being a result of this particular moment in time. And that is something that the South African government should, and I hope that they are taking that seriously, because it has far broader implications than simply the participation of South Africa within the ICC or the relationships with Russia, but really the position of South Africa in global geopolitical disputes, which is a really fine balance that the country is placing itself right now, and the country does need to reflect seriously about the consequences of the summit this year, which is quite worrying for us.
Gustavo de Carvalho, thank you very much for your analysis here. He is a senior researcher at the South African Institute of International Affairs. Still to come.